Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Let's Learn SQL Server series. This is going to be part 6, and we're going to be talking about case when statements. What these statements are they give you the ability to change how the data appears, so that way then you'll be able to get it to appear the way that you want it to, not exactly the way that it looks in the in the in the table. That probably doesn't make any sense at all. So let's just give you a couple examples here. So let's say I select star from person dot person, and let's say that if the person's last name begins with S, then I want to say true. If it does not, then I want to say false. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm only going to concentrate on the last name. So I'm first going to select that. The next thing I wanted to do is now I'm going to begin on my case when statement. So what I would expect is, let's do this. Where last name like S. And let's select in here our last names. Okay. So then yes. This is what I want to see. But let's say I don't put in the other where clause. Now everything says yes. How do I make SQL Server check for a condition that we have in our table? And that's the power of the case whens. So I'm going to remove this here, and I'm going to clean this up a little bit. We can still keep the yes. Okay. Alright, actually, this will be a little easier. So to begin a case when, you guessed it, we're going to say a case when. Great. We get the hard part done. Now we say, great. Case when you want me to check something. What do you want me to check? What column do you want me to check? So here we say last name. SQL Server says, okay, great. You want me to check last name. What about it? What do you care about it? So we say case when last name like S. So we're saying, hey SQL Server, when the last name is going to begin with S, then what do? We say yes. And then so after the case when, in order to end it, you have to say end. If you don't, SQL Server will blow up and it'll say, hey, I don't know what you're trying to do here, but your syntax is wrong. Just put end there, and then SQL Server will be happy. Great. So let's see if this achieved it. Let's go all the way down to the S's. P, Q, R, S, and look at that. Right on the S's, it just said, hey, yes to all the S's. None of the other last names have it. That is awesome. Now, what if we wanted to have last names that did not begin with S to show no? That is extremely, extremely easy to do. All we do is we say else, which basically means if this condition is not true, then do this. Else, no. And that's all we have to do, and that's it. Great, that is awesome. Now we're able to create a new column, and let me alias this as last name begins with S. I know it's a little bit long, but that's what it is. So So now that we can do this, the possibilities of us having to take our data to manipulate it however we want grows tremendously. You might also be as well wondering, well, because we're able to check if the last name begins with S, can we also check if the last name, like, if it contains a letter, uh, or maybe if it ends in a letter, or maybe if we can check a totally different column altogether? The answer to all the above is yes. You can do whatever you want. So let's go back to select star from person, that person, and see what other columns we have available to us. Let's see here. Let's say if the last name begins with S and if the first name begins with E, and if they have a middle initial. That's a lot of stuff, but you'll be surprised how simple this is. So let's clean this up a little bit. It looks right now relatively neat, but we're working with multiple conditions here. So I'm just going to put this on a different line here. Then yes, else no, and then end as can go here. Right there's fine. Okay, great. So we want to have all of these conditions have to be met in order to say yes. So case when last name is like S and first name is like E. Remember how we said that that the first name has to begin with E. Oops. Sorry about that. And lastly, the middle name must contain a value. So we can check that a couple different ways. The best way to check if it does contain a value is to say middle name is not null. Great. So now we've just done all that stuff. And now let's run it and we'll see what we get back. So we have a lot of no's here. Do we have any yeses? Okay, maybe we were a little too specific. Let's say if the first name contains an E. Let's try that. Oops. Okay, no. Okay, we have some yeses here. Great. So, I also want to look at the first name and I want to look at the middle name because I want to make sure that my logic is correct here. And let's rename this to something a little bit more meaningful. A condition. Not as meaningful, but it should work. Okay, great. So let's go down to our yeses here. Here's a yes here. Great. So we have our last name begins with an S, which is true. The first name contains an E, which it does. And then we have a middle initial is not null, which it's not. Perfect. So now we've done all of this stuff. So so now you know how to use the case whens. You can also do it a different way too, which I'll explain. So let's say that you wanted to check the last name if it begins with A, begins with B, begins with C, and so forth, and so on. It would be a little bit cumbersome to say if last name is like S, then begins with S. And then what you would do is you would say when, and then you have to copy all this and paste it again, and then say ABC ST and then you'd say begins with T, and then this would be then. So essentially, this gets here like pretty convoluted. You're repeating yourself multiple times. Rather than do all that, if you have one specific column that you're trying to check multiple conditions on, if it's this, then do this, you can just rewrite it a different way. So you're still going to say a case, but then here you're going to put here the last name. Then you're going to say when. So here you're saying, hey, I'm looking at the last name. This is going to be all that I'm looking at. I'm going to be passing you a couple of values here. If it equals to that, then show this. If not, then do something else. So we say case last name when, and let's look at this here. When, I'm just going to copy a couple last names here. When Duffy, then hey there. And then when Erickson, then what? Now this is here a little bit like restricting in the sense that you can't use in here likes and that kind of stuff. But this is going to say if this is going to be equal to these things. So now if we run this, and just to make it a little easier to find, where last name in and my two values here, Duffy and Erickson. Great. I run this, and now Duffy gets hey there, and Erickson gets a what. So now you learned the case when, and you also learned the case, whichever thing you're looking for, when. So now you have two different ways to use the case when. I really hope this was helpful. If you like this video, please subscribe. Like the video, leave any comments if you like it, if you don't like it. Any type of feedback y'all give me will be extremely helpful in the future videos. All right, well, thanks.